Jeff Pearlman in the herd today. Let's hear it for Jeff. First time appearing on our show, will not be the last. He's a California dude. Okay, first of all, you do 500. You're legendarily known as 500 interview guy. You really you burrow deep on this stuff. So I'm reading it. It says here you did 500 interviews in your book history, more or less than you usually do.
It's probably a little more. My high was the Walter Payton book. I hit around 700, and that was my kind of record.
Now, is the narrative with Brett, interview to interview, primarily the same? Do you kind of get the same Brett everybody you talk to?
Oh, no. It depends on where you are in his life. I mean, if you look back at him in high school, it's funny. I went to his family's house in Mississippi, and I'm with his wife, his sister Brandy, and I say, "Well, what was Brett like as a kid?" And she goes, "Mean." And I'm like, haha. She's like, "No, I'm telling you, mean like craps in a cup, mixes it with mud, and makes you drink it mean." And, he wasn't always that way, but he was saying as a kid, that's kind of how he was. And then you go along.
Maybe or something, a little bully, a little.
Yeah, well, just like a bunch of boys growing up in rural Mississippi.
Yeah.
And, they kind of just beat the crap out of each other, including their sister,
Wow.
Yeah.
And then he goes to college. Mm-hmm. And what do we know about his college life?
Oh, well, he was amazing. First of all, nobody recruited him. When I say no, we're always like, oh, this guy was lightly recruited. He wasn't lightly recruited. He was non-recruited.
Why?
So he played 3 years of varsity ball. His sophomore year, he missed the whole year because of mono. Played 2 years under his dad, Irv Favre. He was very insistent on running the football. So they had a halfback named Charles Burton who ran about 25 times a game. Brett Favre threw, I would say, 4 to 5 on average per game. He had this nuclear arm, and his dad was a coach, and he never threw the ball. So nobody knows about him. And Southern Miss has this guy named Mark McHale, who was an assistant coach, and he was just hired. So he was late in recruiting, and this is his territory. And he's going around asking people, like, I don't know, is there anyone out there? And some coach is like, well, they got this quarterback over in Hancock. He never throws the ball, but I've seen him on the sideline. The guy can just wing it. So McHale goes down and says to Irv Favre, I'm going to come to the game. And Irv Favre is thrilled because nobody cares about his son. He goes to the game. Brett throws it 4 times. McHale says, well, what the hell is that? He didn't throw the... All right, come next week. I promise you he'll throw. Comes a game. He throws 5 times. He's like, what are you doing? And Irv is like, if you come again... And the guy's like, I can't come to more of these games. But he saw Brett warming up on the sideline one of the games and just rifling the ball. And Southern Miss had they had one scholarship left because a linebacker from Georgia turned it down, and the head coach basically said, "You know what? Worst case scenario, we'll put him at safety or defensive back. So we'll just give it." And he ended up being the last scholarship offer at Southern Miss. Had 0 other offers anywhere.
And how quickly, Jeff Pearlman joining us, Gunslinger's the book. How quickly at Southern Miss did he elevate?
It's like the best story ever. He was a 5th quarterback. He shows up 5th quarterback. Nobody knows who he is. They can't pronounce his name. Nothing.
Favre, yeah.
Favre, Brian Favre. Who is this guy? No idea. And they're playing Tulane early in the season, and their starting quarterback was Alric Young.
Freshman year for Brett.
Freshman year.
Okay.
Real freshman year. Alric Young is their starting quarterback, and they used to run like the veer, kind of wishbone-y, and this guy was not a good quarterback. And, the coaching staff was under a lot of heat. And he just goes, it's second half of Tulane. They're playing Tulane. And he says, you know what? Throw in the freshman. And this guy, McHale, the assistant coach, says, he doesn't know any of the plays. Just, you know what? Just throw him in. Let's see. He makes things happen. He seems like he makes things happen. He leads a come-from-behind win over Tulane as a freshman. Nobody even knows who he is. And he's the starter for the rest of his college career.
I've heard stories about some addiction and a troubled life. Big drinker.
Yep. Never in high school.
Never in high school.
Like literally never in high school.
Probably starts in college. Understandable.
Of course.
How bad was it?
How bad? He drank a lot. And when it really got bad is when you were talking about Vicodin and chasing Vicodin with alcohol. Which is what a lot of guys used to do in the painkiller era and still probably do. But it was very bad. I mean, it was to the point where he was, they were at the ESPY Awards one year, and he leaves from the table. And Deanna's like, he's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And he goes off, and he's gone for a long time. And he comes back, and he's different. And Deanna says, what's going on with you? And he's like, well, I took a few Vicodin. How many Vicodin did you take? 13. So the guy was like a serious. It started actually. It's kind of funny. He almost died. His
car accident.
Senior year of college, seriously awful car accident. Almost dies. It's actually an amazing story because he almost died, and he was supposed to miss his whole senior year. And this was kind of out of order, but he almost misses his whole senior year, and he misses the first game. And they beat Delta State without him 12-9. Some Division II school, Delta State.
Yeah.
John Wickham starting at quarterback. Favre's 30 pounds underweight. He was just supposed to be dead. He had an infection, and he comes back, and they play Alabama at Legion Field. Gene Stallings' his first game as head coach. Brett Favre quarterback, 30 pounds underweight, and they beat Alabama.
Holy moly.
Yep, it's amazing.
And you didn't know that going into the book.
No idea.
What was the most startling thing? Jeff Pearlman is joining us, New York Times bestselling author. The book is Gunslinger, The Remarkable, Improbable, Iconic Life of Brett Favre. I just started the book. Beautiful looking book. Folks, I said my favorite book of all time was the book by... Was it Walter Isaacson on Steve Jobs?
Oh, yeah.
It was multiple books in one. This book, as I'm reading it, is becoming multiple books.
Oh, thank you.
Which I think is a real talent. Of the many things, as I'm reading it, I'm like, God, Jeff must have been really surprised by a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Is there something you were most surprised at? I would guess it was earlier in his life. Was it the car wreck? I never heard of that.
Well, yeah, the car wreck. I really love his year in Atlanta. I love his year.
Why?
All right, so he wrote an autobiography after they won the Super Bowl, and he gave 7 paragraphs to Atlanta, and 2 of them were 1 sentence. So he basically skips over Atlanta. And I really love stuff like that. And he shows up in Atlanta, and he's a second-round pick. And first of all, it's great. Jerry Glanville was a coach, and Glanville really wanted them to draft Browning Nagel out of Louisville.
I remember that. Yeah. He was a bust.
Yeah, and it was Nagel Favre, and Kenny Herrick, who was the general manager, was pro Favre. Glanville wanted Nagel. They're in the draft room, and Glanville's like, we decided we need to take Browning Nagel. And Kenny Herrick's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So they draft Favre. And Glanville has no interest in Brett Favre. And then Brett Favre kind of holds out. He threatens to go to Canada. He finally shows up, and Jerry Glanville, you've heard him talk, Jerry Glanville, and he's like, he goes up to Favre. He goes, Mississippi. He goes, hey, Mississippi. And Favre goes, hey, coach. Glanville goes, let me ask you a question. Where'd you go to college? And Favre goes, coach, I went to Southern Miss. And Glanville goes, well, bah damn, I thought we drafted the quarterback from Mississippi State. We got the wrong quarterback. And Favre is just devastated, just devastated. And that whole year, so he was going to be the backup to Chris Miller, who was a good quarterback.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Chris Miller was a good quarterback. And Glanville hated Favre. So second game of the year, they make a trade. They get Billy Joe Tolliver from San Diego.
Remember that too.
And all of a sudden, Favre is the 3rd string quarterback. And that was basically it for him. That season was him getting drunk, him getting fat. And he misses the team picture, right? He misses the team picture. And because he was hungover. And he pulls into the lot, and the team picture's over. Everyone's leaving. And Glanville sees him, and Favre goes, coach, I'm so sorry. There was a train wreck. And in one of the best lines ever, Glanville goes, boy, you are the train wreck. And that was his season in Atlanta. It's the best season ever. It really is.
That's great. They gave it 7 paragraphs. 2 of them were 1 sentence. Well, he wrote the book Sweetness, The Life of Walter Payton, Dallas Cowboys, Boys Will Be Boys. Because I want to hold you, because I want to bring the Aaron Rodgers stuff, which I found the excerpt the other day incredibly powerful.
Oh,
explains a lot in that dynamic. But before we take a break, I do want to ask you, is you really, the tapestry of a whole book, you can write a book and you don't entirely know who the person is, even if you do your homework, because people are wildly complex. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter, your politician, your senator, your quarterback. People are very complex. Good people do bad things. Now that the book's all done, is Brett more complicated than the rural Mississippi kid?
Oh, 1,000 times more.
Yeah, that's my takeaway.
1,000 times more. Definitely.
He's wild. He can be insecure.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, the thing, it's funny. After that excerpt ran, people are like, God, Favre, I got a lot of this. Like, Favre sounded like really a jerk, and Rodgers sounded like really a jerk. And I would say, like you just said, people are significantly more complex than that. And someone who's a jerk at 25 isn't necessarily a jerk. Like, it's all the path.
Sure.
It's all the journey. So I actually see Favre now at 47 as this guy in Mississippi. He lives on this huge property. He's a volleyball dad. He goes to his wife's triathlons. He mows the lawn. He hunts.
More of a giver.
Yeah, oh, yeah, like a great guy. And I feel like the journey and all that stuff, the embarrassment in New York, the beating you took that second year in Minnesota, the force out in Green Bay. I mean, it's as you get older, you kind of see it's all just part of the journey and part of who you end up being as a person.
So an excerpt was released the other day, and it was fascinating. So Aaron Rodgers, and it shows the difference between confident and insecure for all of us is perilously thin. Yeah. A-Rod's the best-looking guy, and then he can't hit in New York against the Tigers, and they drop him to 8th. So you think Brett Favre, legend, good-looking, great family, owns the city. Aaron Rodgers gets drafted. And I want you to take my audience, Jeff, to their first meeting.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So it's a pre-camp meeting, and Rodgers shows up, and Favre is there. And Rodgers walks into the cafeteria, and Favre is the only one sitting there. He's reading a newspaper. It's the worst pickup line of all time. He says, "Good morning, Grandpa," to Favre.
A legend.
Yeah, and Favre, I mean, is just like, he starts telling other guys, "Can you believe what this freaking guy said to me?" And then they're in a meeting not that long after. Rodgers just lacked something that I think a lot of us lack this at 22.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah.
And where you think you're something and you're not there yet. And, they would be in a meeting and he was like, "Hey, Brett, what'd you get on the Wonderlic?" And I don't know what the hell I got on a Wonderlic. And yeah, I got a 35. You got a 22. I looked it up. And,
in front of his teammates.
Yeah. And they're walking out. It was a quarterback meeting. And they're walking out of the meeting. And, Favre was walking with Darrell Bevel. And he's like, what the hell is it? I don't wonder. And then the great thing is, like, the retribution was pretty funny. So it's juvenile. It's childish. It's not very nice. Favre was not nice to Rodgers at all.
That first year.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever been great, but he was not great that first year. And, they really messed with him. And kind of my favorite, just because it's so funny, is every Wednesday, I think it was, they would put out stuff to sign for the whole team to sign on the big table in the middle of the room. And they thought it'd be funny to take Aaron Rodgers' helmet without him knowing and put it on the table. So all the guys are grabbing this thing and they go from here to here to here and they're signing things and everyone's signing Aaron Rodgers' helmet. Rodgers doesn't know. "Aaron, you got to sign the helmet." So Aaron goes and signs his own helmet. So then it's time to go out to practice. He's looking all over. He can't find his helmet anywhere. And someone says, "Yeah, that's your helmet." And he looks and it's on the table and he's absolutely mortified. And he has to go out and practice the entire time with the helmet covered with these signatures of his teammates. And, guys were like, he laughed it off. But he was horrified and in near tears in his locker after, He just was, there was a lot of, I'm not attributing this to Favre, but there were a lot of, at the time, like, gay rumors about Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
He's a jerk. Throw any adjective you want. He took a lot of grief that first year.
Well, and he has been Greg Jennings came on my show and said that he is sensitive, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I mean, it can often be a really good quality that you care, empathetic towards others, and you're more sensitive. Is it quite possible that the California kid Aaron Rodgers and the rural Mississippi kid, they were never going to work?
No.
They're just different sensibilities.
Well, it's interesting because in Favre's career, there's only one person who ever challenged him for the job, and it was Mark Brunell very early on.
Yeah.
And actually, it's kind of funny. Holmgren basically Favre was playing terribly, and he had a vote of coaches. And he said, "What do you guys think about starting Brunell?" And 10 out of 13 voted to start Brunell. And Holmgren, he went up to Favre afterwards, and he's like, "Look, we had this vote, but I'm sticking by you. It's sink or swim. It's me and you." And that was the last time. Otherwise, it was always, we're bringing in David Klingler, we're bringing in Achilles Smith, we're bringing in Kenny O'Brien, Jim McMahon. It was never a challenge. So Rodgers comes along, and it's the first time Favre has really seen this challenge.
And he's aging.
And
the organization's getting a little tired of him.
Yeah, and also, he was a different guy. Favre used to be, Leroy Butler said to me vividly, best teammate who's ever existed in sports as a young player. He knew, just an example, he knew all the words to Rapper's Delight. He would walk around the locker room, black players, white players. He would, he was a joke. He would do stuff that would annoy you if he wasn't the superstar. Like, he was one of those guys, like, you're in the bathroom on the toilet and he would dump the cold water on your head.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which is horrible. Nobody likes that. But the superstar guy who does it, it's funny. He was that guy. But as he got older, he stopped being that guy. And he kind of became the guy. He would park he drove in a separate area. He would have catered. Ryan Grant told me a story. One day, a guy's like, one of the clubhouse guys is like, "Hey, Brett wants you in the back." And Ryan Grant's like, really? Wants me in the back? Yeah, just go in the back. And he walks in the back, and there's this catered meal. And Brett Favre invited Ryan Grant to eat the catered meal with him, and he would invite different guys back. And you could say on the one hand, wow, that's very gracious of Brett Favre. But it's really weird of Brett Favre, too. Like, you're the quarterback. It reminded me when I covered baseball, and Barry Bonds used to have his own recliner that took up 4 locker spaces. And you'd be like, all right, he is a superstar, but it's really kind of a messed up thing to do.
Yes.
So I think Favre became a different guy as an older player. So I think there became a little bit of a divide. Here's Rodgers, kind of the young man's quarterback, and Favre, this guy who's starting to distance himself from younger players.
Where does this rank on the reward scale for you? Now, obviously, there is some success based on sales, which will be very, very good.
I hope.
Not because of this show, but because of it's a great book.
Are you buying 100,000 copies? Because then I'm set.
Is that what you got to sell? Is that where the big
That'd be
bonus comes
helpful.
in? Okay. Gunslinger, Jeff Pearlman, Amazon.com, JeffPearlman.com. Where does it rank when you're done with this? What a process. How daunting, Jeff. When you were done with it and you send it to your editor, how did you feel?
Oh, man. You just want a long nap? It's like, it was very similar to writing the Walter Payton book. That's the one. It was
very rewarding for you, but bittersweet.
But it's painful. These things are painful. They're like pleasure pain. It's like getting a back scratch with someone with long nails. It's like you enjoy it, but you hate it and you're obsessive about it. Yeah, go ahead.
How much time with Favre did you spend?
No, 0. I have a crazy story. Can I tell you my crazy Favre story?
25 seconds.
All right. Favre initially wouldn't talk. I Facebook friended his sister, Brandy. And I'm like, hey, I'm down in Mississippi. And Brandy says, well, why don't you come by the house? And I literally went to the house, spent 4 hours with the Favre family. So I ended up getting the mom, the sister, the brothers, uncles, aunts, everyone. I had 2 interviews set up with Brett and was blown off for both of them.
Still a great book.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.
I appreciate it.